Hey there, I'm Brandon, and this is the Dirt Church Devotional. I've been thinking these last few days, actually, I've been reading in my devotions through the book of Joshua and reading about the conquest of Canaan, the promised land. You know, God had promised to bring the Israelites out of Egypt and take them into the promised land, which was said to be flowing with milk and honey, which, by the way, just means it was awesome. It was great land. It was extremely productive. It was fruitful. It was, I'll just say it again, awesome. So that's what the promise was, and that's where the Israelites were headed. And, you know, they made a few mistakes along the way. And what should have been about a 3-month journey ended up being about a 40-year journey because they had made a few mistakes. Towards the end of that 40-year journey, now you picture this, they're right on the verge of going in, and they had talked to the Edomites, hey, let us go through, let us just stay on the road, blah, blah, blah. They got to the last couple of kings, it was Og and Sihon, they were kings of the Amorites, and Moses sent word and said, hey, let us go through your country on our way to the Jordan. You know, we're going to cross over the Jordan. We're going to go into the promised land. Well, Sihon and Og, they decided they didn't like that idea. So they came out with their armies and they attacked Moses and the Israelites. And they got their cans handed to them. I mean, they got whooped. Israel whooped up on them big time, wiped them out. Cool, you know, I guess. But it got interesting after that. As they were getting ready to go across the Jordan River, now they are right on the verge of going across. As they're getting ready to go across and take the promised land for themselves, start fulfilling the promise, get the promise fulfilled to them from God. 2.5 tribes, I believe it was Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. They approached Moses and they said, hey, this is really great land. Why don't you let us settle over here on this side of the Jordan, and we won't take any inheritance on the west side of the Jordan in the promised land. Their reasoning was it was great pasture land, and they had a lot of animals. They had, you know, sheep and goats and cattle and whatnot, and this land it was just plentiful for that. Moses said, no, you don't want to do that. Don't do that. Let's go to the promised land. Let's go to the other side. Well, they kept arguing. So no, we really want to come. We'll go over and help out and get our brothers settled, but we want to settle on this side. So Moses finally said, all right, that's fine. You can do that. Now, here's the problem. And this is what I want you to get. You've probably heard the phrase, good is the enemy of best. No doubt the land that they were standing in, the land that they were petitioning Moses to petition God to let them stay in, it was good land. It was a good place. But it wasn't the promised land. It was good land, but it wasn't the land flowing with milk and honey. It was good, but it wasn't the best. And yet they wanted it. How can they want that so bad when they can look across the river and they can see the promised land? Let me tell you something. After traveling 40 years in the desert, any patch of green grass is going to look pretty good. After being out in the desert for 40 years, any bit of green land, any bit of pasture land is going to look pretty good. And why not? My goodness, when I've got sheep and cattle, why not settle here? This is great. No, it's not great. It's good. God's trying to take you to great. What am I trying to say to you? This is what I want you to get out of this. We are in a quarantine. Been in a quarantine for, I don't know, 3-4 years now, it feels like. Entire month of April so far and last half of March, so that's a long time. Anyway, when we get out of this quarantine, I promise you there's going to be some things that look good. Do yourself a favor. In fact, start right now. praying and asking God what He wants you to get out of this, what He wants you to have when you come out of this quarantine, how He wants to change you, bless you, transform you, use you, set you apart, and set you free. And don't settle for good. See, there's going to be good opportunities, I think, that come along. There's going to be good options for you. There's going to be things you go, oh yeah, well, that's pretty good change. Don't settle for good. Go for best. Hang on and trust God and see what the best is and run after that. It would be a real bummer to get out of this thing and sure, you've got a few improvements. You're not in the desert anymore, but you've settled for good. Well, what was the end result of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh settling? The Bible doesn't tell us an awful lot. It doesn't go into a lot of details, but I can tell you this much. It, number one, kept them out of the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey. Number two, it separated them from their people. They had a river that divided them from the rest of the nation. And probably the scariest part, the worst part that they didn't even think about, is that because that they were now separated from their people, God's people, they were closer to their enemy than they were to their people. They were closer to the enemy and those who wanted to kill them and destroy them than they were to the promise that God had for them. All right, think about that. Think about that as we hopefully approach the end of this desert time in quarantine. Lord bless you. Have an awesome day. Don't settle. Talk to you next time.